Let's talk about the crankshaft pulley. Specifically, we're going to do that for the Nissan VK45DE V8 engine. The crank pulley is the main component of your accessory system. It drives the water pump, the AC compressor, and the alternator through a belt system. We're here because you might find yourself in the unfortunate position where you have to service this pulley. That means you might need to tighten the bolt, or you might need to fully replace it, which inadvertently would mean that you need to tighten it as well. Now, it is not a very frequent failure. It is not a regular maintenance item, but it could happen. One of the key predictors of whether this is going to happen to you is whether you did it before, because it's rather difficult to get it done properly. So if someone touched it, it is very likely that it's going to come loose on you. And when the bolt comes loose, typically the first indicator is your battery light inside your car. The battery light goes on because the alternator is not charging. However, nothing lasts forever, and like any component of a system, it might wear. It's not likely, but it could happen. So regardless of the circumstances, this is a situation you find yourself in, and we now have to tighten that bolt. Is there a correct way to do it? Is there a shortcut to do it? The answer to both questions is yes, and now we're going to look at some of the pitfalls of the job, see what you can do, and I'll share some of my experiences. I hope this video helps you in one way or another. And here are a few ways I've thought about on how you could get the job done. One, you could use the impact tool, but just beware, space might be a little limited to do it in place. Two, strap wrench, which is the worst idea. Don't even do it. Three, you could make a clutch tool work, which I think is a decent compromise. And four, the Campmore tool by Nissan, which is the perfect way to do it, but not cheap. See this? This is a crankshaft pulley. And that right there, it's called a crank bolt. This one right here is the main pulley that drives every accessory in your car. AC compressor, this is an idler, water pump over here. You have alternator and power steering pump. And this right here is what it looks like when removed from the car. So sometimes, so let's explain how this goes. You have a crankshaft, which this goes onto over there like that. Then you have a crank bolt goes in here, and then it threads into the crankshaft. This in this engine, it might be kind of difficult because you'll notice once you have this in there, there's no really nice way of holding it. Different crankshafts sometimes come with drilled out holes over here that you can hold them so that you can tighten your crankshaft pulley bolt, but the VK45DE has an interesting design for pulley. And sometimes, depending on what kind of prior work has been done to your engine, the pulleys themselves don't just randomly go bad unless you have a really bad idler, tensioner, or belt that ends up damaging the pulley and making it vibrate. Or sometimes prior work. If someone tries to work on your pulley and ends up replacing it, usually they don't tighten them properly, which means you're probably going to come back to the pulley. And now, so you have landed on my video because you're thinking, how the hell do I tighten this pulley? I really have no other way. Usually, when you try to tighten this, and as you can see, it's got lines over here, at some point, by the time you tighten it hard enough, it's going to start pulling the whole assembly with it, and that's not what you want. When you tighten a washer, you don't want the whole washer coming with you, right? Because it's not going to get tight enough. It ends up just turning the whole assembly. You need to lock this in place, keep this stationary, then tighten the bolt down so that you can bring the whole assembly closer to the crankshaft. So this video will be me showing you a few ideas on how you can do that, and I'll show you what the best is, as well as show you which one is the worst one. In no particular order of importance, I'm going to show you these methods, and first one is going to be the clutch method. Well, I'm doing this one because it's probably the cheapest for most people. You can get this tool per rental and return it when you're done with the job. Just don't break it, right? If you break it, you keep it. So let's talk about these methods. This right here is called a fan clutch tool. You could rent it from O'Reilly's And this is the part number for O'Reilly's over here, 670.65. I believe that was $65. Of course, you get it back. Then here's the AutoZone part number. And AutoZone was about $80, $89, if I remember correctly. But let's open these. This is how you use them. So look at it, pretty new. Better not lose my receipt. I mean, they had the record, but still, for convenience purposes. So this is what it looks like. And in a bit, I'll show you how exactly it works. All right, right handle. So set that down. Open the AutoZone one. And again, pretty much the same tool, right? Okay, you break it, you keep it, huh? So here you go. And the way that works is, let me find my bolts. Come here. So remember these holes, these threaded holes I mentioned earlier. So there you go. Get some bolts, long enough bolts. So you want them long, but you want them strong at the same time. Can be kind of a tough thing. Probably need to do this first. So the way I did it was this. Set this one down in here. Open it as wide as you need it to be. And now I'm looking at it thinking, how wide does it need to be? Okay, so this is how you trigger it to open. And it could shoot you. So be careful. Okay. Then use whichever combination of these holes you need to make it work. Right here's an example. Well, I'm going to run into problems over there. So let me do it this way. There you go. I'm not going to thread it all the way right now, but you get the concept. And do the same thing on this other hole. Okay, so here you go. As I said, what you want to do is be sure that you can grab the center so that it doesn't move at all. Then, did I screw up by not having? Let me put this on the floor, man. See, it's strong enough to do that, right? And of course, I couldn't do this at that point, but that should be through. And with that happening, what you can do is you're pretty much holding this stationary, right? You're holding the inner core of the pulley stationary, and then you can put your 19mm over here and turn it tight. And so this is actually what I end up doing is this. Let me try to apply it on the car. I'm not ready to get dirty right now, but I'll demonstrate with this one over here, right? You see this other pulley over here? Let's see, can we see the one on the car? Okay, I couldn't get all the way in the car, but basically this is what happens. So this is it installed in the engine. What you do is turn this all the way down, right? Turn it till it jams on the ground. And so that's not moving anywhere. Step on that. Then get your tool in here and then turn it. Turn it until it locks. As I said, I'm not gonna do it right now. I just don't really have the time or I'm not appropriately dressed to do it. So yeah, there you go. That's how you can do it. That's one way to hold this stationary, right? I have to warn you, as I said, you want it to be thin enough to be able to go in there. And again, here are the measurements. But you want them to be strong enough. I'll tell you from experience, by the time you crank it hard enough to hold this steady while you're turning this, you're gonna bend them. So just have your tools ready to remove these once you bend them. I don't have any more to show you right now, but from experience, I know you won't, 2 or 3 sets are probably gonna bend. It's pretty hard to get it done, to get, and how to explain it? I mean, even if there were, I probably need to get the measurement here, right? Maybe 1.5 inches long would do you good. But
basically you have so much, you've got quite a lot of length freestanding right here. Even if you got something that was just short enough or just long enough, this distance here from the top of the front of the flange all the way down here, that's a lot of just standing length, so you'll probably bend it over there. But anyway, just something to let you know. Do your best, do not disassemble that, leave that exactly where it is. It's been balanced for that. And yeah, doesn't help you much. All right, that's it. That's one. I just wanted to show you, that's one alternative as how you can do it. Not the most convenient, but yes, you can definitely get it done.
I hope that made sense, but I'll demonstrate again. So what you want to do is do this to hold the inner core of the pulley, not the bolt, just the pulley. Then wedge this all the way against something hard, which is the ground in this case. And just like that, this pulley is not going to move anywhere. It's basically like just holding this with one hand while using your other hand to tighten the bolt. So this one here is a 2003 Infiniti Q45. As you can see, these guys had hydraulically operated fans. So you had this canister here. It looks, well, has the same fluid as this one here, power steering fluid. And then this one here was piped to your water pump, and your water pump eventually piped it back to your clutch over here. So let's get to the bottom and see how it looks like. So looking at it from the bottom, let's turn that off. Looking at it from the bottom, here's your here you go. Here's your crankshaft pulley. And here's your crank bolt in there. You can barely even see it. So try to imagine what it's like to work on it. Needless to say, getting any kind of power tool in there, like an impact or anything like that, is going to be really tricky. Plus, you need to make sure that the impact actually does the job. If you do get a quote, you might get a quote to remove remove the radiator. Let me zoom out a little bit. This is your radiator over here. This is your fan shroud and housing, and which has your cooling fan in there. There you go. So, and even then, you're not really guaranteed that once you remove all that, you'll be able to get that, and sometimes those kind of shortcuts are what end up damaging your system. But so you need to find a way to do it mechanically, and that's why I was able to get that clutch fan tool, the one with the red handle. I was able to lock it in there. Again, I was just seeing with my hands. That's what I like to call it. Locked it in there. Had that bar coming out from the bottom here. It hit the ground. Of course, I had to lower the car, and you had to, because of how high it is in there, I had to lower the car almost all the way to the ground. And then what I did, I think I used a ratchet with the cheater bar. I can't remember what I used for the crank bolt in the middle. But either way, I used my foot to step on the turning, the breaker bar, or whatever it is I was turning the bolt. I used my foot to step on it. And meanwhile, I actually had a phone here recording, and I just kept an eye on it. And when I turned it enough to where I saw the car kind of lifting, I said, well, I guess we're good enough. So anyway, as I said, I'm going to show you the third way to do it. And the third way involves going to the back of the engine. Again, this is the front of the engine. We're going towards the back. Drain oil pan drain bolt over there. Going towards the back of the engine. This is that bar that I used to lift the car right here. Nice and sturdy. And then that right there is the back of the engine, and that is a bolt that will be opening to gain access. Can you see the crankshaft sensor over there? Anyway, so that one right there, and we'll be talking about that shortly. This is the underside of the 2008 M45. I already removed the first tray, the tray that goes here. There it is, and it gives you access to the oil pan, the drain bolt over here. And obviously you get a clean, nice path. So I said I was going to talk about the crankshaft pulley. And you can see it here.
And in this generation, you got way better clearance because, of course, you have a standard electrical style cooling fan system. You can attack it from the top, but there's not much clearance. I'll tell you, if you're trying to get here, as you can see, there's not much room. Well, you could, but it's just a little more cumbersome. So I prefer, whenever I deal with the crank, the few times that I have to, I do it from the bottom. So this is the normal direction of turning for the, for the pulley. And as I said, once you do this, you can barely, if you're trying to tighten the bolt like this, you see everything else turns, right? And then what I said was that tool that you got here, you put the two legs over here, find a way to hook it up, lower your car, have the tool sitting on the ground, and then you can tighten the inside, leaving the pulley stationary. You see how much clearance you have or don't have here? Likewise, in the newer generation, you don't really have space for a tool in here. So what I'm going to do is show you a magical spot in the back where you can make it work. First, I'll remove this tray over here. This is the one that protects the rear side and also gets you, man, it's kind of rusty. I better clean that. So yeah, this is the one that protects the crank position sensor. So let's buzz it off. It's got what, five bolts. All right, now you can get clearance to the back. What we see here is a pathway to back here, which is what you saw on the other one. This is a 10 millimeter. I need to find a way to get to it. As you can see, there's not much clearance over there, but I'll show you a trick with it. I'll show you what happens when we turn the crank. All right, so hang tight. What we're gonna do now is get back there with the socket that I believe is long enough. This is a 10 millimeter. Get it in there. Oh, I'm tightening it. Okay. Okay. So look in there. That's your flywheel. You can barely see anything from here. But what's going to happen is, let me get the ratchet and start turning the crankshaft. Remember, if you stand in the front, the crankshaft will be turning clockwise. So is the flywheel in the back, and I'm calling it a flywheel, but it's actually a signal plate. All right, so I'm going to start turning right now. Let me get the light. Okay, so see everything else turning? Okay, watch what happens in here while I turn it. As you can imagine, that's not very good for getting work done. In the olden days, depending on what it is, well, with the manual transmission, it's not too hard, right? You could get it into gear and lock it so that it holds the crankshaft tight. But an automatic transmission is pretty much driven by fluid, so you can't really do much with the transmission to hold the engine steady. Back in the day, sometimes people would get, let's actually stick this in there so you can see what's actually moving. Okay, I'm going to turn it again just so you can see what's going on. Those teeth right there, that's what the starter drives. The starter gets this thing turning, and then it starts running at whatever speed it needs to. Then over here, well, we can't really see it from here now. Right here, the crankshaft sensor, where is it? Where's my finger? Right here, okay. Then the crankshaft sensor, which is over here, reads some teeth that are behind it. There's a second row of teeth back there. So the crankshaft sensor is going to sense the signal plates, the teeth, and then it will get to know how fast it's turning. Can you see the silver plate back there? The teeth are different. They're not like cogs like this one here. Well, we'll show signal plate later. But so that's the difference. So how do you stop that from turning?
Oh, before I forget, back in the day, and to this day some people still use this, but a screwdriver could be used back there to stop the teeth. I personally would not endorse that, but I should mention that it's a method that could work for you.
One way you could think about, as I said, was if you hold this steady right here using the clutch tool, it keeps this, keeps this stationary. Then you can turn the crank. What I've used in the past, I've tried this before. Sometimes, depending on your pulley design, you might be able to get away with this. Sometimes what you do is get a strap wrench like this and just, hook it around wherever you want it to be, actually, if you got the teeth for it. I need to put the phone down. Okay, like this. This is an example. So this is a strap wrench over here, and what you do is get the strap in there and lock it this way in whatever direction you don't want it to go. Right, so you get the teeth locking it. Then when you try to turn it, this one is going to lock this way. So that's one way of doing it, one way of holding it steady. Before I got my strap wrench, I've also used an old belt because I just keep my old belts. And what I do is I loop the belt, then I loop it back like this. Well, it's actually this way. To lock it this way, it works just like a strap wrench, And when I hook it up like this, see this little loop over here? The little loop, there's a metal pin over here. Do you see this pin over here? Yeah, that's what I've used in the past to hook it onto. And it's pretty effective. It holds the outside pretty well. But I'm going to warn you, do not use that method. So this is me telling you how to kill somebody, but telling you not to kill somebody, right? And this is the reason. When you see this, the reason this works as a harmonic balancer, that's what they call them sometimes. It's got an outer core, which has the ribs. It's got the inner core right here, which is metal as well, right? But then it's got something in the middle, rubber. Let's flip that the other way. You can now see it, right? This is what is driven by the crankshaft in the middle. This is what drives the belts, the accessory belts. So this one right here, all metal till here. Then you got metal here, but then you got a rubber core in here. If you use that method of holding the outside of the pulley and turning the bolt inside, in effect, what you will be doing, well, obviously, the bolt is pretty strong. That's why it's turning the whole thing. You'll be turning the inside and the outside separately. And sometimes you end up breaking this rubber over here. It's really hard rubber, you can't tell. But when it wears, it will be pretty evident. I had one that I damaged like that, but I don't have. It was actually a tester. I had it on a testing engine, and I was just turning. That's what I do with these engines. I try to take them all the way to the end to see how much abuse they can take, and I come and share the information with you. So this is one such video. Do not use a strap wrench on the crankshaft pulley of a VK45DE. The design does not lend itself to that. So I'm going to show you the best method. And obviously, as you'd imagine, the best method is the most expensive method. Initially, what they used to tell you was that you need to stick like a wooden handle inside the crankcase to lock the crankshaft. Then you can turn this, which works very well, by the way. It works very well when your engine is on a stand. But when you have it over here, this is the tool you need. This one right here. This tool is called, it's a Cantmore J45476, made in the USA, so that's good. Let me explain how this one works. See those teeth I was talking about over there, right? Those teeth are pretty strong. I mean, if they drive the whole engine, why not? So what you do, let's try to record this. See this tool over here? Whoa, with the teeth facing up. Stick this tool in there. Wiggle it sideways till it catches something, and it did. And then try to find that threaded hole. Remember the hole that I removed that was holding this one here? This hole over there? Yeah, that's where this one is going. Thing is, it can work even without a hole, because even without securing it in the hole, because it will move, then at some point it's going to stop. But you don't want it slipping, because if it slips, you'll probably get the edge of the tooth and then chip it. All right, so now we're going to try to do the same thing we've been doing. Let's look at how it engages. I can barely see it. I'm sorry, I can't go any higher. That's all I have for you. There you go. You can see the teeth engaging over there. So what I'm going to do is get here and, again, try to turn this. And you'll see what happens in there while I turn it. There's barely any movement. All right. All right, so I'm ratcheting back, then turn. I'm going to try to turn it backwards the other way, because that did not move at all. See, there was very little movement. There you go. It locks. Then I'm going to try to turn it clockwise now. That's it. And just like that, I could actually feel it a little bit. That's how you end up locking it. That is the best. I think it is actually the most expensive tool I've ever bought. On a pound-to-pound basis, it's probably like gold or diamond. But it pays for itself pretty fast. And as you can see, if you were doing an engine replacement or trans removal, this bolt over here, this is what connects the signal plate to the torque converter. You have 4 of those. You can use this to hold it stationary and actually turn those. In reality, you can actually turn those without this tool, but this tool just helps give you that next level of certainty that you're doing the right thing. So there it is. That's all that tool does, or that tool does all that. So I hope that's clear. It's probably going to be a long-winded video, but if you stick with me to the end, you'll be able to see how you could save yourself a lot of trouble down the road from not doing it incorrectly. As I said, one thing you do not want to do with this engine is try to use a strap wrench. Yes, it could work, but it is probably going to get damaged. Another thing I wanted to say is, if for whatever reason you've had your pulley removed, a lot of shops and a lot of people that end up, say, rebuilding your engine would probably use impact tools, which are pretty good for repetition. But then impact tools also cause hammering, typically, right? So this thread right here, when it's being installed, depending at what point the impact was used, an impact usually hammers while turning, right? So your regular turning tool just turns it, but an impact also hammers. So that could end up messing with the threads a little bit, and the threads in the snout of the crankshaft. And what that results in is, it might work right now, but if things were not very well balanced, you're very likely to end up with a loose crankshaft again. And a lot of people that actually talk about having a loose crankshaft are doing that because some prior work was done. Prior work could be due to, a bad pulley that ended up being replaced, and what causes a bad pulley? Bad belts could cause a bad pulley. Bad tensioners could end up causing your main pulley to go bad. It is pretty hardy, as you can see. That rubber bushing is really hard. But then, if this, for whatever reason, ends up getting disintegrated, this one might stay in place while this one starts jumping out, and then your belt starts slipping. One of the key indicators that you have a bad pulley or slipping pulley is your battery light coming on, because this belt in here, it's a big belt over here, runs the alternator right here. right? This is the power steering pump and this is the alternator. Usually that's the first indicator that it's not working right. And well, you also have your water pump, might not be working right, but it's just a host of problems could happen if you do not pay attention to it. And obviously you might hear a squeal as your belt rubs over the pulley. Whatever it is, could be a lot of different problems, okay? So, as I said, long-winded video, but I just wanted to share with, with people that this is the tool that, it's a tool you could use. It costs about $300 if you can get it. I tried to buy this thing for about 2 to 3 years, and then suddenly one day it just showed up and I was like, okay, I'll buy it. So, and of course, remember to take this thing off before you start the engine, otherwise you'll be in trouble. Probably needs me to turn it back the other way first to get it a little loose. There you go. Now it's loose enough that I can remove it. And now I'm just going to do the reverse of everything I did. And installation is the reverse of removal. Oh, while I'm here, bonuses, by the way. I love showing bonuses. Infiniti, or rather Nissan VQ45DE engines, the V6s, they usually had rear main seal problems sometimes. The M45s, rarely, if ever. As you can see, this is dry as can be. And whenever I replace those engines, usually the crank seals are usually pretty good, but I just do it because why not, right? You're giving new life to an engine, but yeah, dry as a bone. These engines do not leak from there. At worst, you'll probably get valve cover gasket leaking, but as you can see, this one is not leaking either. It's a pretty solid engine for what it is. All right. Okay, we're going to close it all up and wish you guys all the best. If you do have a, if you do have a problem, I hope that makes sense.